Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about Hbar today. Specifically, Hbar with their new governing council member, FedEx, is now on the board. So this little video is going to be thrown into my whole little sub-series of Hedera governing council members. But this one being new can also be a really big one. Right, so what I'm going to get in this video today is most of us are familiar with FedEx. I'll give a small story about what they actually are. But the biggest thing is, why would they join the Hedera Council? What benefit do they get from the council? What benefit could Hedera get from FedEx joining? And that's the main stuff I'm going to discuss today. So a quick clarification, because I've kind of seen this misconstrued or heavily insinuated otherwise, is when you join the governing council, you're not required to use Hedera Hashgraph, right? There is no law written or presumed that says that if you join the governing council, you must now use Hedera. Most of them tend to, though, right? Because if you're going to help push the project, guide what direction it goes, run the nodes, you're more likely to get invested into it in the first place. So it is not official that FedEx is using Hedera Hashgraph. However, there's a lot of things that make a lot of sense and would fit very well for both parties if they choose to do so, and we're definitely going to go upon that today. So let's just kind of dive right in, and per usual, if you guys have been here before and there's anything you want to add, any questions you have to ask, any clarifications, just give your opinion or more information down below. Please do comment. I really appreciate it. I like interacting with you guys. But now let's just kind of get right into it. So FedEx, it's in the council now. If you didn't figure that out already from the first minute or so. But follow me for a second, because FedEx processes roughly 16 to 20 million packages in a single day, right? And each package is scanned between 10 to 20 times during the entire transit. From when it comes into the warehouse, it moves down to a different section. It's got to get scanned in saying it's been received, going to the next truck, saying it's leaving the warehouse. It happens a lot, which means FedEx is going to generate somewhere between 160 million and 400 million tracking events every day, right? Again, this is now data. This is not cross-border payments. This is a tokenization, but this is sending and receiving of data, something that Hedera has done multiple times, including my favorite examples with SpaceX and the satellites. But now if we imagine this, with 150 to 400 million tracking events per day just from FedEx, right? If just 10% of those events were anchored on Hedera, that would mean hundreds of transactions per second, potentially really pushing towards that 1000 TPS or higher adaptation scenarios that a lot of people have talked about, having this blockchain or that blockchain being able to do, but no one's actually really had the utility to test it live. FedEx could definitely have that possibility, right? And that's just one company. Now, I realize with FedEx recently joining the council, they haven't just announced production or use of the network, but it does set aside the fact of it's now more reputation, right? Another large company in a different narrative, so to speak, that's coming in to support and possibly use Hedera. This could be pretty big. To briefly clarify, again, FedEx joining the council does not mean that they are putting packages on scans on-chain tomorrow, or that they're accepting Hbar, or that they're replacing any of the internal systems, at least not immediately. What it does mean is, again, like every other governing council member, right, they're going to get a node, they're going to participate in all the governance decisions, they're going to help steer what direction the network goes, and they've committed, executive and technical resources. They're going to help out with the networking in the direction, essentially. And it greatly increases the odds of on-chain activity. So when we have more and more of these large international institutions join the blockchain governance, awesome stuff. These large companies aren't going to join the blockchain without a couple different things happening, like legal clearing it, compliance clearing it, risk communities review what's worth it or what's not worth it for them. And that alone is a signal. But the real story comes down to the math of what's going to happen if/when FedEx goes ahead and starts running on Hedera. So let's build this kind of thought. We'll keep it rather conservative because these base numbers are still pretty effing big, to be completely honest. So again, if we're going on to low estimates of 16 million packages per day, and there's 10 scans each, okay, we're talking about 160 million scans of just that day, Right? On the middle side, 18 million packages, 15 scans each, 270 million of these events every day. And on the high end, 20 million packages, 20 scans, 400 million daily events. Okay. Now, would FedEx put all of that on chain? Probably not. Probably not. I think that's unrealistic. One, you're not going to put everything on chain specifically right away. That's a little bit of a risk factor. You want to make sure everything works, that it's reasonable, and that there aren't better options that happen once you start the process. However, enterprises will typically anchor things like hashes or proof of event records or custody confirmations or batch summaries. So it could end up doing parts of any of those, and I think that's far more realistic specifically at the beginning. So again, for a little bit of a model percentage here, let's say scenario one, they do 5% of anchoring. Again, on the low case at 160 million transactions, and they only do 5%, that's still 8 million transactions per day, right? And that's 5% of one niche as to what FedEx could end up using Hedera for. All right, we can go up a little higher again on the mid case. We can say 270 million scans at 5%, give us 13.5 million events a day. Again, only at 5% on-chain activity. And on the high case, 400 million times the 5%, 20 million a day. That would turn into about 231 TPS just from FedEx at 5% alone. Okay? So, and this could scale, right? Like, I mean, if we do 10% anchoring, that raises it up to 16 million a day or 185 TPS, 27 million a day at 312 TPS, 10% at 40 million a day, 463 TPS. The point is that if FedEx hops in and does things on chain, even just putting a small fraction of the data and the transactions on chain, we can get up to anywhere between 200 and almost 500 TPS just from FedEx putting in 5 to 10% of the data that they go through. And this is where that 1,000 TPS a day becomes really possible and not just hype or something that, it's in theory. No, I mean, it's actually physically possible if FedEx goes ahead and gets on board to do that. And once again, why would FedEx, right? I think it's clear why Hedera would want that. I mean, that's a huge deal of the multiple transaction coming in today, a lot of data transfer, huge use utility. Heck, it's huge just having them on the governing body. But, blockchain, we tend to seem to forget this, but like blockchain for logistics isn't just about crypto speculation, right? It's about things like fraud reduction, claims resolution, customs compliance, chain of custody proof, a bunch of ESG reporting. It's a bunch of their little notes and data sheets that we can do immediately on a decentralized network. Shipping disputes alone cost global logistics industry billions of dollars annually, and this would cut down and essentially negate any type of shipping disputes. Again, instant information on what's going where, when, how much, and for what reason. So if FedEx hopped in and uses Hashgraph for these kind of effects, it would greatly reduce the lost package disputes. Again, that's billions of dollars a year. Right? Insurance claim ambiguity, it saves them money on the who's right, who's wrong, where did the package go, was there an issue, where the F is it, and delivery timestamp disagreements. You ever go on tracking, like try to track a package, and it tells you roughly, right? How about let's get rid of that roughly? It can end up telling you exactly per second where everything is. It's just an increase on the computation. So again, even if only a fraction of a percent of this ends up coming in through Hedera, at 80 to 90 billion dollars in annual revenue, just tiny improvements means massive savings in this case. Again, if anchoring scan data reduces dispute resolution by even 5%, that's pretty much operational leverage at scale. They would save millions of dollars. There's FedEx's reason. Now, why would FedEx choose Hedera over anyone else? Ignoring the fact that they're on the governing council, so it'd be a little bit weird if now they chose something like XRP or XLM. They still could. FYI, they still could. I don't think they will. But why else would they go ahead and try Hedera instead of doing their own or going somewhere else? Right? We now realize that FedEx is constantly interacting with realtors, with manufacturers, with custom agencies, insurance firms, pharmaceutical companies. Right? If FedEx issues blockchain verified shipment proofs, counterparties may need to integrate. Not a bad thing. Right? Insurance providers could offer discounted premiums for verifiable custody. They can give incentives in this case, essentially. Customs authorities could accept blockchain anchored trade documentation, and now the network effect multiplies. Right? You're no longer modeling FedEx TPS. In this case, we'd be modeling supply chain TPS. If competitors like UPS or DHL follow suit, throughput compounds incredibly quickly. And I think this is just another real world case that is going to happen sometime soon. Again, I think it's going to happen on FedEx, on Hedera. But before long, I think you're going to see UPS and a lot of other shipping companies go blockchain routes as soon as they start realizing how much cheaper it is and that they get the trust of it. And that is still a big thing for a lot of companies and just individuals, let alone out there, is trusting crypto. I mean, investing into it, lost all trust. You can tell by the market, right? We had 1010, then we had several things happen in the last 2 years. So in the biggest bull case, FedEx could really pump Hbar if they get a use case. Now, even without the use case, guys, it is just a huge company to have in the back pocket. It opens doors to more networking options, right? Again, in the world, it's who do you know that knows who? And FedEx is a large-ass company to get in with. So FedEx, if they started building production-grade infrastructure on Hedera, there is no way that is not a needle mover. This could be one of the largest utility cases that's really happened to crypto if it goes full, not even full, 5 or 10%, let alone 50% or more live on chain. Because even just at 20 to 50 million transactions, this becomes a baseline from logistics alone. That creates a floor of network activity, and this can greatly change the long-term valuation models. So I'm kind of excited to see where this ends up going from here. So again, let's wrap this up on specifics with FedEx has not announced production deployment. I'm just highly expecting it because most of the time, governing council members use it. And they've been talking about or toying with the idea of it for a while, like almost every large distribution company. So though right now I feel like this is a little bit about hype, if they go on chain, this will be very much about hype, but at the end, it ends up being about throughput, right? And when you have something like a chain like Hedera, throughput is really what separates the speculative blockchains from the infrastructure networks and having shit that's actually growing and moving. So if we could get up even to 10 to 25% of FedEx scan data being anchored on Hedera, we're potentially looking at hundreds or even over 1,000 of sustained transactions per second. That is a pump narrative as well as a structural thesis to keep Hedera moving long and hard for quite a while. So if you guys have made it through this whole thing, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate you all. If you like this or you've seen me enough on the feed, liking or subscribing is very much appreciated. Regardless, let me know your thoughts down below and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Peace.